Okay, so today we're going to break down the systematic case made in a really influential book, I Don't Have Enough Faith to Be an Atheist by Norman Geisler and Frank Turek. Let's dive right in. The whole book really is built on this one core idea, that everyone has faith in something. The argument is that even if you're a skeptic of, say, Christianity, you are, in fact, a true believer in your own set of beliefs. So the real question isn't if you have faith, it's which worldview requires a bigger leap when you look at the evidence.
So how do they do this? Well, they frame their entire argument like you're putting together a giant jigsaw puzzle. They suggest that if you examine all the pieces of evidence, from science, from philosophy, from history, a single coherent picture of reality starts to form, just like having the box top to guide you.
All right, so here's the roadmap they lay out for us. It's a very specific, logical path through these 5 key stages. We're going to walk through their argument step by step to see exactly how they try to put this puzzle together. First things first, before they even get to the question of God, they start with something way more fundamental. Does truth itself even exist? And if it does, can we actually know it?
And you can see why this has to be step 1, right? I mean, if truth is just relative, if it's all just your opinion versus my opinion, then the whole investigation is kind of pointless before it even starts. Any meaningful conversation about what's real just becomes impossible. To defend this idea of absolute truth, they introduce a really clever tool they call the Roadrunner tactic. And yeah, it's pretty much what it sounds like. It's designed to expose statements that, like Wile E. Coyote, run out over a logical cliff and destroy themselves.
And here's the classic example of how it works. Someone says, there are no absolutes. The simple comeback is, are you absolutely sure? And poof. To even make the claim, you have to state it as an absolute truth, which makes the statement contradict itself. With that foundation of truth supposedly established, they move on.
All right, so let's get to the next big piece of the puzzle. Having argued that truth is real, the authors now turn their attention from philosophy to the physical world to build their case for a creator.
First, they're really careful to define their terms. The specific argument they're making is for a theistic God. That's a personal creator who is separate from the universe. This is different from pantheism, where God is the universe, and of course, from atheism, which says there's no God at all.
Their case for a creator kicks off with the law of causality, something all science is based on. The logic is pretty straightforward. 1, everything that has a beginning needs a cause. 2, the universe had a beginning. 3, therefore the universe must have had a cause. The real linchpin, then, is that second point. Did the universe really have a beginning?
To back that up, they point to what they call a mountain of scientific evidence, which they summarize with the acronym SEARCH. This covers everything from the second law of thermodynamics, which says the universe is winding down, to the fact that the universe is expanding, to the discovery of the radiation afterglow from the Big Bang.
But they don't stop there. They argue it's not just that the universe had a beginning, but that it seems, well, tailor-made for us. They point to what scientists call the anthropic principle, this incredible, shocking discovery that dozens of physical constants are fine-tuned on a knife's edge for life to even be possible.
And the precision they talk about is just mind-blowing. I mean, look at this number on the screen. That's how much the force of gravity could be changed before life like ours would be completely impossible. And that's just one constant. The book lists dozens of these, all of them dialed in to an unbelievable degree.
So, they've made their case from the vastness of the cosmos. Now they bring it all the way down into the human heart. They argue that evidence for God isn't just out there in space, but it's in here with us. And this leads to a really confronting question. If there's no transcendent moral lawgiver, can we truly say there's an objective difference between the life of Mother Teresa and the life of Hitler? Or does it all just boil down to personal opinion, like preferring chocolate over vanilla? The book argues that this moral law is undeniable, and we see evidence for it everywhere. We know it exists not so much by how we behave, but by how we react when we're wronged. We all have this instinct to cry, "That's not fair." And the very fact that we make excuses when we do something wrong proves that we know there's a real standard we've failed to meet.
Okay, this is a major pivot point in the book. So far, they've argued for a creator God who is also a moral lawgiver. Now they narrow the focus and ask, has this God ever revealed himself to humanity in a specific way? This is where they move from general theism towards Christianity.
Their thinking here is pretty straightforward.
If you're willing to entertain the idea of a being powerful enough to create the entire universe from nothing, well then, miracles are actually small potatoes, right? So they argue we shouldn't dismiss the New Testament just because it contains miracles. We should examine it like any other historical document.
And they don't just rely on the Bible itself. They point to external sources. Get this. They cite at least 10 non-Christian writers from that period who mention Jesus or early Christianity. For perspective, they say only 9 contemporary sources mention the Roman emperor at the time, Tiberius Caesar.
They also make a case for the New Testament's reliability based on how early it was written. They point to some fascinating internal clues. For example, the book of Acts ends really abruptly and never mentions the deaths of its 2 main characters, Paul and James. The most logical explanation, they say, is that it was written before they died, putting it incredibly close to the actual events.
So, if the documents are historically reliable, this brings us to the absolute climax of their entire case. What do we do with the claims made by the central figure, Jesus?
Here they bring in the famous argument from C.S. Lewis, often called the trilemma. Jesus said things like he could forgive sins and that he would judge the world, claims no mere mortal has the right to make. This leaves you with basically 3 options. He was a liar, he was a lunatic, or he was, in fact, Lord. The one option that's not on the table, they argue, is that he was just a great moral teacher.
And that brings us to the grand finale, the complete box top of the puzzle. This is the entire 12-point logical chain that forms the backbone of the book. It's designed to walk you step by step from the simple idea that truth exists all the way to the conclusion that the Bible is the Word of God.
And so we come full circle, right back to the book's title. The central challenge they pose is this. To be an atheist, you have to believe, as an act of faith, that the entire universe popped into existence out of nothing, that life spontaneously came from non-living chemicals, and that we have a deep-seated sense of morality with no one to give it. They argue that that requires a much, much bigger leap of faith than what their evidence points to.